So, if your nonprofit fundraises nationally, there's this one state with a compliance quirk you really, really need to know about. Today, we're going to dive into Arizona's unique and frankly often misunderstood rules for charitable solicitation registration. And just so you know, this whole explainer is part of a multi-state fundraising compliance series brought to you by the folks at Ironwood Registrations. Okay, let's start with a pretty common assumption. If you're in the nonprofit world, you basically live by one simple rule, right? Before you can ask for a single dollar in any state, you have to register there first. It's kind of like compliance 101. And look, for almost the entire country, you'd be absolutely right. But there's always a but, isn't there? There's one state that just plays by a completely different set of rules. And yep, that state is Arizona. Okay, so let's dig in and break down exactly why Arizona is such an outlier. We're going to get into its, believe it or not, surprisingly simple regulatory structure. And here it is, the main takeaway. Arizona actually repealed its broad registration laws a while back. So what did that mean for you? Well, for most nonprofits fundraising there, you don't need to register at all. Yeah, it's a complete 180 from what you'd normally expect. Now, of course, there's always an exception to the rule, right? And this one is a big one. The crucial point here is something called the Veterans Organization Exception. Basically, if your nonprofit's mission is connected to a veterans cause, then you are the main group that still has to go through the registration process with the Arizona Secretary of State. And really, this whole distinction is a perfect illustration of Arizona's completely reversed approach to regulation. So let's dig into that. I think the best way to see it is to compare their model directly to what you find in, well, pretty much every other state. So here's the fundamental difference laid out side by side. In typical states, the thinking is guilty until proven innocent. Registration is required for everyone unless you can find a specific exemption to get out of it. Arizona flips that script completely. Their approach is more like innocent until proven guilty. Registration is not required unless your organization fits into one of those very specific regulated categories. But, and this is a really important but, let's be perfectly clear. This doesn't mean it's the Wild West out there. Just because you don't have to register doesn't mean you get a free pass. All those other critical laws, like consumer protection rules against misleading people when you're fundraising, those are all still very much in effect. So what happens if your organization is one of the ones that needs to file? Let's walk through exactly what that process looks like. Yeah, it's the logical next question, right? If you find yourself in that veteran-focused category, what exactly does Arizona ask you for? Well, the good news is the requirements are pretty standard stuff. You're looking at submitting a registration form to the Secretary of State, and you'll include the basics like your IRS determination letter, certain parts of your annual IRS Form 990, and of course, some identifying info for your organization and its leadership. And it all needs to be verified by an officer or director. And here's a little detail that your finance team is absolutely going to love. Unlike the constant yearly renewal cycle you have to deal with in most other states, Arizona's registration is typically a one-time thing. That's right. Once you're registered, you're pretty much good to go unless you decide to formally withdraw or your registration gets canceled for some reason. Now, I know it's really tempting to hear all this and think, great, my compliance work just got a whole lot easier. But honestly, that can be a dangerous trap to fall into. We have to zoom out here, because Arizona is just one single piece of a much, much bigger multi-state fundraising puzzle. I think this really says it all. Even though Arizona's requirements are pretty limited, if you're a nonprofit running a nationwide fundraising campaign, you still have to comply with the rules in a ton of other states. You just can't let Arizona's easygoing approach create a false sense of security. You've still got, nearly 40 other states to think about? And trust me, most of them are way stricter. So if you remember just one thing from this entire explainer, let it be this. Arizona is the exception. It is not the rule. It's a total outlier when it comes to multi-state fundraising, and you absolutely, positively cannot apply its logic to your compliance strategy anywhere else, especially not in places like California, New York, or Florida. At the end of the day, really understanding these state-by-state differences is what separates a smooth fundraising campaign from one that runs into a whole lot of problems. Navigating this complex web of regulations is, well, it's complex, and frankly, it's why specialists like Ironwood Registrations exist in the first place. So, I'll leave you with a final thought. As your fundraising footprint grows, what other state-specific rules might be flying under your radar right now?